Welcome back to the TBR Network. I am your host, Francesca, and here on the Blunt Review, we basically just talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. No, I'm just kidding. Well, a little bit of that. This is just combat sports and other things from my perspective. And I'm still learning. I'm still studying the sport. So these are just my thoughts. So like, comment, subscribe. I am open to dialogue, so please let me know your thoughts. But without further ado, we're going to get right into it. So this past Thursday, on February 20th, Fight Club OC had their show that was like a hybrid show. It's boxing and MMA. Now, I did come to see a boxer. I just came to see one person, but there's a lot of people on this card that were actually really exciting, that I was actually like really excited to see. So the first fight of the night is Joey Dorado, who was 1-0 coming in, versus Keith Carson, who was 7-6 coming in. So I would like to apologize to Mr. Carson because I tagged him as Paul Amaro like the whole fucking night, and like my bad. And then a few people, thank you so much to the people that hit me up and were like, yo, that's Keith Carson. I was like, okay, my bad. That was what was on the Fight Club OC thing. But yeah. I'm sorry. But this was actually a really interesting fight. Keith Carson, is coming off of a loss against Alfred Kazakhstan. Oh my God. I am so sorry, Alfred, but I can't say that. I'm sorry. Alfred K, who actually just fought Anthony Pettis in Pettis' Bellator debut. I believe it was like January 25th. I went to that. It was fucking lit. It was Julia Budd versus Cyborg. So he's coming off a loss from Alfred. But before that, he did get a unanimous decision win on one of the Combate Americas cards. Like, this guy's fought a lot of good competition. I mean, in addition to Alfred, he's fought Boston Salmon, who has fought in the UFC. He did go 0-2, and I think he was recently cut, but, a UFC caliber opponent right there. Coming into that fight, Carson was actually on a 4-fight win streak, and they were all first round finishes, so he was had hella momentum coming into that fight. Another athlete that he faced was Joey Rouquet, who went 4-for-6, who is 4-for-6 inside the Combate Americas promotion. So, I mean, fuck, man. He did lose to all of them, but these are all talented fighters. Like, I'm okay with that. And what's funny is, like, okay, so he has a boxing bout on his, like, on the fight that he fought before Alfred. And I was like, Eric Puente? I was like, wait a second. I know who that is. And what's funny is, like, I was at this fight. I was actually at this fight. Like, I looked it up, like, on my Instagram story, and I was like, damn, like, that's crazy. Like, I saw him fight before, but it was boxing. So that was interesting. And, I mean, fuck, man. He went to a decision. It was a unanimous decision. But, dude, Eric Puente is a fucking talented boxer. He's sponsored by my friend Jesse. He owns the brand Puro Gulpe. I hope I'm saying that right, because fuck, my bad. But I mean, I have some merch from him, and I like absolutely love it. But yo, Eric is fast. He feints. He throws combinations. He'll lead with something slightly different every time. Like, you can't get a beat on him. It was too much. Especially just boxing, and then he couldn't, like, take him down. So, I'm okay with that. And it's, it proves a lot that he was able to go. I believe it was 4 rounds, because that was Eric Puente's debut, and they do 4. So, yeah, I mean, 4 rounds. That's a good amount of time. But moving on to Joey Dorado. So Joey is training out of CSW, He's coming off a win in his pro debut against a very capable, highly capable Trevor Wells, who just recently fought for Combate the Americas, I believe, up in Fresno. And, he earned a decision victory over an undefeated guy that was started off super strong, but he's able to weather the storm, and he came back and he was very technical. So, coming into this fight, so that's his win. And the last time he fought, it was a little bit less than a year ago, I believe, I want to say. But, he had great movement in this fight. I mean, he gave Carson a lot to think about, great 1-2 combinations, hides the right hand beautifully behind a jab. I mean, I really liked his striking. I really liked the way that he did things. And, his speed was the first thing that I noticed. And he was able to catch Carson towards the end of round 1 with the fucking right hand from hell. Like, I was just watching it back and dude, you can hear that. It the crack fucking echoes throughout the whole hangar. I was like, oh my god, this is wild. But what's even crazier is it didn't drop Carson. I was like, damn, this fool's face is fuck his jaw being strong, his whole face, I was like, damn. But, he did hit the bike right after, so you could kind of tell he was a little bit rocked, but he was very composed. I was very impressed with that. And coming out for round 2, he gets a takedown off a nice little trip, landing Dorado on his back. It was quite nice. And the third round, slows a little bit, not by much. And, what was interesting that I started noticing in this round was Dorado likes to throw a nasty spinning elbow coming out of the clinch. I was like, oh, he threw that shit, I think, in the first round, but man, that was crazy. Because it always kind of catch him a little bit off guard, and giving him time to kind of break away. So I thought that was fucking dope. And, one thing, I mentioned earlier Dorado's striking, but dude, he has great striking ability. His head is always off center line. I don't remember him ever getting hit clean, in that fight, he didn't look marked up at all either afterwards. So, he had great level changes and level changes in striking combinations. He'd go body, head, body, and he'd be moving all over the place. And it was so hard for Carson to kind of anticipate where he was going to be. And there is this crazy sequence of knees to the body that, it was wild. So Carson has Dorado by his neck pretty much in the clinch, and he's kneeing him, and then he'd knee, and then Dorado would fire back with 4 heavy body shots, and you could just hear him bouncing off the rib cage, and then Carson would come back with a bunch of knees. I was like, oh my god, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Both of these guys are as tough as they come. And at the end, it showed, on the judges' scorecards, I believe it was a split decision win for Dorado. So, congratulations to him. It was well earned against a tough and game opponent. So, hope to see them both at another show, and it's on to the next one. A boxing bout. Austin Brooks versus Javier Francisco Navarro. So this is a pro debut for both of these individuals. They are both featherweights, so that's 126 126 in boxing. I do have to admit that since, like I said earlier, I really only came to see one person. I didn't really study who was on the card, but I go to get up and wander because that's what I fucking do. And I noticed how competitive this fight is, and I was like, oh, let me sit my ass back down and watch this. So when I just recently watched it back, I don't have the beginning, but I just remember being really, really excited to just return to my seat. So both of these individuals are southpaw fighters, so that did make it interesting. Navarro is 26 years old, out of Madera, California, and man, I have to say this to you, sir. You are one of the toughest individuals I have ever seen. Just an absolute dog. Like, one of those people that, like, they really don't give a fuck if they get hit in the face. You know, they just keep coming. And, you know, I thought it was a really good matchup for Austin Brooks, actually. You know, he fights out of City Boxing Gym and the arena out there in San Diego. You know, he's 24 years old and extremely talented. Like, his ability to see punches is just crazy. Like, he got tagged a couple times, yeah, but what's interesting is, so I like did math and shit. It was wild. So they both had similar reaches. They were actually 0.8 inches apart, with Austin actually being slightly longer. But the difference is, you know, Austin's punches were straighter. You know, they found its target. You know, he knew where Navarro was going to be. Like, his ability to connect in transition was just, you know, amazing. Like, his ability to just accumulate damage on this individual. Like, and don't get it twisted. You know, Austin might be 126 pounds, but he does hit hard. And, like, so the fact that Navarro was able to just eat those was just astounding. He just kept coming forward and just landing hard punches of his own and, you know, really bringing the fight to Austin, which was interesting to see Austin fight backwards. Like, I always kind of like to see that, you know, someone's ability to fight going backwards. And, man, he was just able to stick and move, pick his shots, you know, like, his fight IQ was very impressive. You know, I like his ability to handle pressure as a fighter. Like, I feel that's key. And, you know, what a fight. What a fight. It was literally back and forth until 101 into the last round, and, you know, Austin was able to get that TKO. But, you know, talking to people afterwards, I was like, you know, this fight is probably going to be Austin's hardest fight in his next few fights. Like, in boxing, they, like, build you, you know, they, like, take their time. So I'm really glad I got to see this fight. You know, it really showcased how good he really is. So congrats to you, Austin, on your very first professional win, and thank you, Charles Bosecker, for a hell of a matchup. Like, this is the man when it comes to matchups. It's perfect. It's so competitive every time. So, on to the next. We are headed back to MMA, and this is Fight 3, a featherweight matchup, which in MMA is 145. It's going to be Danny Silva versus Dennis Fisher. Now, it's interesting because on Tapology, it says he was 3-0 coming into this fight, and on the OC Fight Club thing, it said 2-0. So I'm going to go with 3-0 just because it kind of sounds doper, and I think that's correct. Fisher came into this fight at 0-2. Now, Fisher, sir, you have incredible hair, I must say. You know, you got one of those afros that's like just long enough, you know, to give it a little bounce. I see you, my friend. I like your style. But Dennis is a southpaw fighter. He was switching stances here and there throughout the fight, but, you know, he's quick, athletic, long guy. You know, he came out in Muay Thai shorts, so, I mean, I assume maybe his background is in that. I'm not sure, but this did make it an interesting matchup, you know, against the style of Danny Silva. Now, Silva comes from some of the best coaching one could find. You know, he's training with Cub Swanson, Marco Huas, Mike Winklejohn, the very, very prominent boxing coach, Yoel Diaz, BJJ practitioner, Joshua Jabinski, and is over there with 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu in Orange, I believe, as well. You know, this is about as so as team can get, you know. Silva, you know, has some tricky stand-up. He was able to feint and slip to get inside to close the distance against a rangy Dennis Fisher. You know, he was very patient, picking his shots, and had this crazy counter in round 1 where he catches Fisher, who proceeds to then fly backward into the corner, bounces back up off the corner, and comes back with a knee that appears to land on Danny's face. Now, this was some WWE shit, like, straight up, okay? Like, I'm not sure if this was a knee that gave Silva the enormous swelling under the eye, but it looked like it had connected. But despite that, Danny kept pressing forward and cutting off the ring nicely. It was tough for Fisher to deal with. One thing that I was pretty impressed with, though, was, Fisher's ability to get to his feet in a ring. No cage. That's hard to do. I can respect that, especially against someone who will really make you pay for every inch that you're trying to get. Good takedowns from Silva, and, Fisher did well to mitigate the damage as much as possible, trapping Silva's arms, making it hard for him to post up and really deliver the full breadth of his ground and pound arsenal. And, he was able to hang on there until the second round when Danny caught him with it was like a grazing uppercut in close proximity, which appeared to me to hit his nose. Like, it made this crazy crack crunching noise, but it was in fact his eye. So it turned out to be an eye injury, and, all in all, it was a competitive fight. There were many exciting moments, and Silva was able to come away with it in that second round. And there's a reason this dude is now he's 4-0. There's a reason that he's 4-0. All of his wins coming by KO, TKO. He's a fucking monster and a featherweight to be reckoned with within the division. I'm sure we'll be seeing him in the UFC in the very near future. Now, on to Fight 4, which is the whole reason why I really came to this event. Okay? We have Uriel Villanueva Rojo versus John Ornelas. Hope I'm saying this correctly. It was both of their debuts, so another double debut here on this card. And like I said, this was the fight I came to see, okay? Reason being, I've seen Uriel train a handful of times at Raw Talent Boxing over there in Costa Mesa with Chuy Gutierrez, who's a former boxer that was, signed for Golden Boy. He trains, boxers, Muay Thai fighters, and MMA athletes alike. I mean, just to give you a few examples, right now he's works with current UFC flyweight Ashley Evans Smith, who faces Molly McCann March 21st for UFC London. He also has Diego Paez over there, who is a savage 5-time Muay Thai champion who fights out of Classic Fight Team as well. Very dynamic yet technical style. You never really see what's coming, what he's gonna throw. He has some crazy highlights, so you should definitely go check him out if you're trying to see some crazy technique. Other MMA murderers include Andre Walker, Blake Builder, Christian Aguilera, and Geoff Miller. It's a crazy amount of raw talent that Chewy has accumulated, no pun intended. So I definitely could not miss this fight. And, people at the gym were telling me how good Uriel was and how hard he hit. But I really had no idea. I don't think I really fully understood how much ability this dude really has. Rarely do I get excited about boxers, fighters in general, but boxers in particular. And man, within a few seconds of the opening bell, I was just in awe. You ever see someone in the sport of boxing that they were just made for this? The way they move, the mechanics, the IQ of their game, the way their combinations flow together, each punch carrying the touch of death. Oh my God, this shit was so beautiful to watch. And, hats off to his opponent, John Ornelas. One tough SOB who was taking these shots from Uriel and at one point was really hurt to the body, but was able to get out of it and recover. I'm not sure, how he was standing at the end of the fourth, how he was able to get it to a decision. But, especially when Uriel was landing weapons of mass destruction upon his body and upon his head. It was wild. It was very action-packed, back-and-forth fight. The crowd was going crazy. They had the two families of the fighters sitting next to each other in the bleachers, and, there was a lot of a lot of them on each side, and the chants were just deafening back and forth between the families, like through the whole fight. I mean, it was truly another incredible debut fight, put together by Charles Bosecker, and ultimately Uriel gets the judge's nod and earning his first professional victory. And I can't begin to explain how hyped I am about this guy. And if you think that the hottest 1-0 prospect in the sport of boxing, and his name is not Uriel Villanueva Rojo, I'm here to tell you to your face, or I guess to your ears, fuck you. Okay? He is it. He is the next one up. So if you don't know, now you know. We on to the next. The co-main event saw us in the bantamweight division in MMA, so that was going to be 135. We had Trent Meaux, who was 8-6-1, versus Benji Gomez, who's 9-13. So we'll go ahead and start with Benji. He's a southpaw fighter, has fought a lot of talented guys. One of his most recent losses came to Yuma Orichori, who trains over at Team Oyama and just recently fought on LFA against Leandro Gomes. He's very, very talented fighter, and Benji was able to take it the distance, so I was pretty impressed by that. Another good guy he faced was Joseph Morales, whose last two fights in the UFC were against Eric Shelton and Davison Figueiredo, who fights Joseph Benavidez, by the way, next weekend for the vacant flyweight title. That's about to be fucking lit. I'm excited for that. But back to Benji. This is an interesting matchup because of the amount of fight experience between the two. Combined together, they have 37 fights. It's 22 for Benji and 15 for Trent. So definitely the most experience on this card. Trent trains out of CSW, who really embodies violence at the highest level. You can expect every fighter to have incredible strength and wrestling ability, be down for the fight 10 times out of 10, great grappling, mental toughness, very technically sound fighters. Even the amateurs that come out of that camp are fucking good, and you can always expect a good fight when someone from CSW is involved. Meaux has fought a lot of fighters that have or had ended up in the UFC at some point, like Andre Ewell, Roberto Sanchez. He even fought the likes of a former Cuban Olympic wrestler, Miguel Perez. And, he seems to spend time in both the flyweight and bantamweight divisions. It's kind of hard to imagine him down at 125. I thought he looked really good in this fight. He looked strong. He looked good at weigh-ins. He just came out there and dominated Gomez. I think the heavy grappling played a huge part in that. He was pretty tired, unable to answer, never really found too many openings to get his striking off, and Trent would close the distance so well and so quickly. It was just, once he got a hold of him, he just didn't let go. A high-level grappling was kind of the tail of the tape for this one. Trent Meaux comes away with the victory, so congrats to him. Moving on to the main event, saw us back in boxing in the super featherweight division, so that's going to be 130 pounds. We had Andrew Segura, who was 2-0, versus Zoe Lucnor Discerne, who is 0-6-1. So this was an interesting main event. It turns out that I know Zoe. That name isn't on the flyers, but I had recognized it after they had announced it at the beginning of the fight. I was about to leave, low-key. I was super tired, and I was like, you know what? Damn. Every time I go to a show, I always miss Zoe's fights. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to stay. It's only 4 rounds. So Zoe came out here with Red Boxing Promotions, which is a fairly new boxing promotion. They're out in Pico Rivera, and although their last show was in LA, if you haven't been to one of their shows, I highly suggest that you go and check it out. I've always had a blast every time I go. They have great matchups, great crowds, and it's still home to the most epic walkout I have ever seen, okay? And this happened by Angel Moreno, who came out to the ring on a fucking horse, okay? And you know me, I fucking lost my mind when I saw that. It was fucking wild. But Ray Rodas, the promoter, was there tonight as well. And he's really burst onto the scene here in Southern California. So again, I suggest that you go and check out one of their events. You will not regret it. But back to the boxing, you know, Zoe is a tough test, even though his record doesn't really reflect it. You know, he's a bit of a late starter, so over the course of 4 rounds, I just don't think he has enough time to implement his style of fighting. When he started to weigh on Segura in the later rounds and grapple a bit more, wear him down, you could tell that Andrew had never experienced no shit like this. You know, it was the area of the water that he was not familiar with, but he showed a lot of heart, didn't back down in the later rounds when the gas tank was damn near on empty and Zoe was still pouring it on, you know. He came into this fight at 2-0, not having gone the distance before, not having faced a style as awkward as Discerne's before, and not having to dig deep in a fight, you know. Like dig deep in a dog fight, okay? I think he did quite well considering the difference in experience, like in terms of opponents and the difference in just time spent in the ring. But, you know, he's quick. He had Zoe in trouble a couple times, you know, on multiple occasions, actually, to the point where I thought the ref might call it. But, you know, Zoe managed to weather the storm and really started putting it on him in the 3rd round. But like I said earlier, Segura still stood there with him for the remainder of the fight, and I think now, having had this experience, you know, Andrew is going to be a much better boxer for it. I feel like he was kind of forced to grow in this fight, and it was a tough battle. I mean, the bout, you know, ultimately it ends in a draw, and rightfully so. Both of these guys gave it their all, and it was an exciting fight. Lots of great action, and it's just, you know, a great way to close out the night. All in all, another great event from Fight Club OC. They really have it figured out, and if you haven't experienced it yet, you'll be in for a great night of boxing and MMA. You know, big shout outs to Roy and Drew Anklebrick for putting this all together, and Charles Boegsecker and Curtis Millender for the consistent, incredible matchups each and every time. You know, I really look forward to the next one. But it looks like that is going to do it, folks. Follow the TBR Network on Instagram at The Blunt Review. You can also follow my personal Instagram. That's going to be Francesca_Dominique. Like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for other recaps. We out of here.